if people don't understand why people do what they do, whether it's blowing up buildings or doing drugs or cheating on their spouse or anything that we have laws against, then they're not going to understand how to change it. Brute force is always easier than finesse. And if you can get the cops or the army or whoever you want to enforce something, it's easier just to smack the kid and say, don't do that. Well, but or even the war on terror, okay, so let's just blow shit up because they, did something to us. Instead of, I'm not sympathetic to just make it clear, I'm not a sympathetic person to terrorists, except that in order to defeat terrorism, if it were even possible, you need to understand what's pissing those people off. You can't just say they're evildoers. I know I'm going back to 2001 here, George W. Bush. You can't just say that and expect that's going to solve the problem. The problem, Jim, is that most people have no self-awareness about what's going on in their mind, and which means they lack effective judgment to understand what's going on in other people's minds. And so it's very easy and simplistic, almost moronic, to say, okay, you're either good or evil. I mean, this is the fundamental aspect to certain religions that will go unnamed, where everyone is obsessed with right or wrong, good or evil, black or white. The universe is not black or white. The universe is gray. But human morality, which is totally a construct, is that it's just easier, give me a form and I can say, what my ethnicity is. It used to be the same thing with gender. There were 2 options. Now there's like 50. But the point is, it's easier just to check off one box, because then I can put you in my mind in a certain category, and it's lazy thinking. It's harder to think in nuance, but that's reality. And so it's not hard to clear most traumas. It's really not. But we've been brainwashed, we've been hypnotized by society to believe in the victim-perpetrator duality. And if something happened to someone, they were a victim of someone else's bad deeds. Yeah, I'm generalizing. Then the victim becomes disempowered because they accept as the identity, I am a victim, bad things happen to me. And part of the definition of a victim is the person is subject to being hurt. And so the identity keeps the person disempowered, which means they're not likely to be able to overcome the victim mentality, which often means more shit's going to happen to that person because they're approaching their life on the defensive or running from life instead of engaging in it. So if people don't understand why people do what they do, whether it's blowing up buildings or doing drugs or cheating on their spouse or anything that we have laws against, then they're not going to understand how to change it. And just by throwing police enforcement or having laws is not going to solve it. Otherwise, Nixon's war on drugs 50 years on would have been a resounding success. But there are so many reasons why people do drugs, why they sell drugs, why they, all these sort of things. If you don't deal with the underlying societal and ultimately individual issues, then these societal problems continue. It's easier to simply start at the top down and try to arm wrestle someone into submission than to actually take the time and either in a preventative way, which is hard, prevent those, those ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, to actually figure out what's going on takes a lot of work. To solve it from where I sit is not that hard, but to get people to consider that they can face their baggage without being afraid of suffering anymore, that takes self-awareness. And, I don't have the marketing budget to educate the whole world on that.
The emergence of learned helplessness is something that obviously alarms me, because societies that are filled with more high agency people versus low agency, empirically just do better. And I back to why, right? I sometimes just try to figure out why are so many people falling into this really destructive behavior pattern of learned helplessness. And, there are a lot of reasons. Certain people, like, they're easier to govern, right? If people are like always thinking they're the victim and it's always somebody else's fault, right? It wasn't my fault. It was that mean person over there.
Exactly.
It absolves them, right, of the responsibility for themselves.